Oh, I can't wear two
No?
earphones.
Why not?
I have to do one at a time. Because if I put two on, it just seems um I don't know. It actually seems unbalanced to me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like you hear too much of me and too little of yourself, or what?
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah. A little
Yeah,
bit of feedback maybe. It's like if you sing with headphones on, your voice is different.
so true.
Yeah, usually way off key.
That's true. Yeah. How we feeling
Yeah.
today?
I'm feeling great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean,
Yeah.
feeling a little frazzled and things going on right before this that have been interesting. And so I'm like,
Mm,
all right, let's zone in, Samir. Let's
yeah.
let's focus.
See, it's funny. I was just talking about this with my friend who was here a little while ago visiting, and we're both yoga instructors. And he is teaching at a new space where he says when there's shit that comes up in his day, that he can go into the class and not put on a mask and just teach from that energy.
Hmm.
It not necessarily bringing the anger or anything like that into the class in the sense of like bringing it into the teaching, but just coming in with that energy of like, okay, stuff just is not going my way today, and I'm just going to teach from this space and give what I can and like let you do your practice.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard um it's such a hard space to hold, because you're actually really vulnerable in that teaching position. And so like letting someone in on your energy when maybe you are dealing with what you think their expectations are, like, oh, that I have to know everything because I'm the teacher,
Hmm.
it actually creates a like much deeper practice for himself and for his students, which is so cool.
Fuck yeah. This is gonna be an interesting podcast, by the way. I can already feel it.
Yeah, so how do you, I just kind of started talking, but how do you usually do this, like
Yeah, it's
intro
free.
or whatever?
I mean, it's free flowing. At some point, I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself, but we don't even have to do that right away. Who cares?
Okay.
Yeah, the more I do podcasts, the more I'll figure out how I really want it to go. But right now,
Yeah.
I'm just going with whatever.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'll start out with what I came in here with. So at the end of this, uh, I s- I was thinking that it would be ending at around 5, so an hour from now, and so I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
meeting with my girl to go to the movies with a bunch of my with a bunch of my coworkers,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, hey, I left the door open in case I go over 5 o'clock, so that you can just come in and I don't have to get up and open the door. And I was like, oh, you can sneak into my room if you want to, whatever. And she was like, why would I have to sneak in? And I'm like, well, so that you don't distract me. and then and then I was like, I thought about it and I was like, okay, well then just hang out in the living room. And I could feel my fear of her coming in and changing the vibe and having a part of me close up. Say we're talking about something that I'm not really exposed to her or whatever. That like scared
Mm.
me. And so I actually invited her to come and sneak in because I caught that it was a fear, but I guess
Mm-hmm.
she still felt that and was like, I don't really feel very welcome, so I'm just going to wait outside. And I was like, whoa. So I started feeling like, well, how do I freaking solve this? She doesn't feel welcome, da 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 da. And so I'm like, babe, I'm just feeling excited and like I want everything to go perfect, but please come in if you really want to listen to the last end of it and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like coming in with that sort of weird pressure feeling, weird like, am I trying to hide from her? Am I like trying not to stir things up? Am I like, why would I even care? Why would I even have a feeling of caring that she comes in? And yeah, I did want to confront it, but still it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, okay. So can I ask you some questions about that?
Yeah, please, let's do it.
So Yeah. So with that fear of like interrupting or her sort of seeing something and having that change your action, why is that an important thing? Like um what did you realize by having that fear? Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, a few feelings come up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely fear there. Like I can feel myself being afraid of her reaction to maybe something that we may talk about,
Mhm.
or I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't feel like maybe I feel super comfortable being entirely myself, I guess. And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really odd.
Well, and it's so it's not that odd in the sense that usually the people closest to us, we're afraid to show different sides of ourselves because we've been taught that like, you know, I don't know, I'm just gonna go right for it. Like talking about sex with your parents is super awkward and um, you know, it's not appropriate. Um, if you're talking about you know, just the education of it, that's fine. Like, hey, this is what this is. But if you talk about things like, I don't know, positions or you
That
know, that you
would be hilarious.
right? So so like there's certain
Dad, I
sides of our
love doggy style. It's my favorite. How about you? It's my favorite.
right? So if you like, you're taught not to have those conversations with your parents because it's like that's a part of yourself that's not okay to be shown in that way. And in some cases that's kind of true because those, you know, very deep connected sexual sensual experiences are really about the energy between those two people. So as you share that energy, you kind of, you know, if you share it and you talk about it and, you know, bring a different kind of expression to it, it changes the vibe, right? So there's certain people that we are sort of triggered by, like, this is not an okay version or part of myself to share with this person. And so we start to like box ourselves off, right?
Yeah.
And when we choose a partner like this person who hopefully is just as accepting as you are of yourself and themselves, those parts of yourself that you've been told like you can't show anybody else then become really um, not heavy but loaded because we're afraid that if this person sees this part of ourselves that we're not allowed to show anybody else, that it's not a special experience, it's a bad experience.
Mm.
And true intimacy in my world is showing every part of yourself to someone when it needs to be shown. So it's not about like, you know, I'm not saying that you need to sleep with your coworkers or you need to you know, cross certain social boundaries that are already there, but meaning that you shouldn't feel that any part of yourself is bad um, or necessarily even dark, because in my belief those dark things that we have in our personality or in our person are not as dark as we think that they are. And those kinds of expressions are just energy. And if it doesn't come out in a healthy way, it's going to come out in an unhealthy way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I have one disagreement, but I don't want to go there yet.
Okay.
I'm so okay, no, maybe not a disagreement, maybe a curiosity. It's so what because I feel like we do have dark emotions inside of ourselves. And the problem is
Okay.
that they get darker the more we suppress them, disown them, or act upon them, or deny them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like where does that lie? Because some people might have such a strong or such a deep pain of lack of intimacy with the opposite sex that they actually there's so much pain there that's been unfelt, unhealed, unwhatever, that they build these dark willingnesses to rape, to
Mm-hmm.
sexually project, to do all these things, and that can create quite a dark condition in a person, in my opinion.
Yes. So where I'm getting to is that it's the desire to rape, I don't think comes from a place, and this is my perspective, but it doesn't come from a place of um that 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 they start out there, right? Like you said, someone that has an aversion to the opposite sex because they've been hurt, like hurt people, right?
Hmm.
So if they have an aversion to a woman and therefore they, being kind to a woman, because being kind to a woman is like at some point they, like a woman totally flipped out on them or hurt them back, and instead of confronting that in the moment, and this goes for anybody, like instead of just confronting someone's um, intention in the moment, like actually asking what their intention was in that interaction. And trust me, it's so easier said than done, but if you don't confront it, like the farther away that you let it get and the further down you push it, the more it turns into, like, energy still has to come out somewhere, so that energy comes out in those acts of rape and violence against women because of something that potentially happened that created that aversion,
Hmm.
right? And so what I'm saying is that if you come back to that space of that hurt feeling, that dark feeling of I'm unworthy, like, I don't know, this, I have been told that I'm worthless and I believe it. And, I don't know, I have a cockroach infestation or something, like I'm a dirty person, I'm homeless, you know, those aren't, those, those aren't bad things. Like, well, they're bad things. It doesn't make you a bad person. And the more you can separate those two and see that internally, like we're really all just longing for belonging and connection and like someone to see us in this world and
So
like
could we,
really see us.
yeah, sorry to cut you off. Is there
That's okay.
couldn't you say, yeah, this is tough for me, man, because wouldn't you say it's like not bad people, but they are doing unloving, bad things? Like if we're measuring on the scale of loving or not loving,
Hmm.
it's still, I feel like, accurate and almost shines the light of truth on an action that doesn't have to come from a place of judgment, but as just a recognition of something true. Like, this is beef. It's not chicken. You can't convince me it's
Hmm.
fucking chicken because I'm looking at it.
Right.
It's beef.
Okay, but give me an action because that's a tangible
Yeah. So
thing. Actions aren't always.
yeah. So like, hmm, an action. An action would be okay. So I'm gonna. Oh, this one might be interesting to talk about. So an action is. I'm thinking about food right now. So like,
Okay.
so what would be more loving? Vegetarian, like to animals.
Mm-hmm.
Vegetarian
Mm-hmm.
or vegan? And yes, vegetarian is more loving to animals than meat eating,
Mm-hmm.
but vegan is another level of love
Mm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
deeper. And
Yeah.
like, so, okay, and here's an example for a meat eater, right? It's like, I only kill animals once a month,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to do it every week. And I'm like, yeah, cool, that is more loving, but it's still on a scale of less unloving.
Loving. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's not
Yeah.
on a scale of loving.
Right.
So it's what's less
Mm.
unloving. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So it's like,
Yes, I get that.
so
Mm-hmm.
there, I feel like emotions and actions are like that. So we like to be like, well, what's more loving?
Mm.
But really what we're asking is what's less unloving instead of what's just loving. And loving is not raping. And then
Yeah.
a step towards that, which most people don't do when they're trying to get rid of an addiction or a compulsion that's quite negative, is they try to not do it, but then they don't feel why they even want to do it. So
Mm.
they try to disconnect from a feeling and a compulsion that's actually inside of them,
Mm-hmm.
and then no energy gets to flow because no truth is being accepted, whatever. But like,
Mm-hmm.
you want to get to the point where you want to love the person, not just not want to rape them.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
So it does, but so what's your question?
No fucking clue. Okay, so I guess, yeah, I forgot what we were talking about. So we were
Yeah.
talking about it's not bad people. It's so inherently okay. This is kind of, I guess I'm answering my own question. I don't know if this is true. This is why I felt like this is going
Mm-hmm.
to be an interesting conversation because
Yeah.
I'm using I think my logic is pretty on point. I'll just say that.
Okay.
but
That's good.
my humility for
Mm.
like to actually feel the truth, I feel like is
Mm.
where I'm quite arrogant about. So I'm
Okay.
like trying hard not to go there, but I feel like I'm already there, so I'll just roll with it.
Yeah.
Like, I believe it makes sense to me that yes, God created us with no negative urges to rape
Mm.
or whatever. So inherently,
Okay.
at our core, we are pure in a sense, and that's what we want to get back to because that's where life starts. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like the goal; it's where life begins. I believe. Like we're
Yeah.
all trying to get to this point where life starts,
Yeah.
right? And and so yes, but we do have so much unloving emotions on top of that and choking that pureness that it could be seen as this person just almost all their desires being bad.
And so, okay, so this is an awesome conversation to have because this brings me back to um, the point about yes, it's on a scale, like emotions are on a scale from lovable to unlovable, right? Or loving to unloving, not lovable to unlovable.
Yeah,
So
that's subjective.
right. So it's this idea that it's not about the action. So this is where intimacy comes in for me. That once you focus on the action, you've lost the ability to dive deeper, like into that purity state. So what you want to do is look at those emotions that come with it. But here's the kicker, not in a place of judgment.
Yeah.
In a place of like sadness. So anger is only it's like think of, we're sticking to the food analogies. So think of at Thanksgiving, if you cook a turkey, there's like this little white thing on the turkey that pops up when it's done. So it's an indicator to say like, hey, take me out of the oven now, right? Like pay attention to me. Anger is the same thing. Like anger, there's a few emotions that are like that, but anger is the best one that is just like, hey, pay attention, there's something here. Right? But if you just look at the anger, it's not enough if you want to get into that pure state. So by actually looking at where that anger comes from and looking at the intention of the actions that got you there, that's where the magic happens, and that's where the intimacy comes into play, because you're saying like, okay, anger and happiness are exactly equal, meaning that they're emotions, and every emotion is equal. Every emotion is there to tell us something. And so by looking at that anger that gives you that compulsion to want to do these bad behaviors, whatever you're addicted to, if you look at the underlying thing, that's where you can shift it and actually get back to that space of like, I got really angry because there was someone that, told me XYZ, or like the first time I got naked with a woman, she just laughed in my face, like, or then, so whatever happened, like that bad, horrible experience. And instead of taking that in to say like, wow, this made me really insecure, like I'm going to ask what she's laughing at, and like, that, or tell her like, okay, laughing at me naked is not encouraging or whatever, right? So instead of having the language to have that conversation, you think, oh my God, she's laughing at me, there's something wrong with me. Like there's something wrong with this body that I'm in. And I have to take this personally now. So I'm so scared to be naked around someone this next time, right? And then the next time you don't get naked around someone, but you still have that urge to connect in that physical way, then it leads to something really unhealthy where you don't take boundary cues, or you want to act out on your anger. And a lot of this is subconscious, but what I think has brought us to this point is that a lot of times, especially in English, it's not really a romantic language. And so we don't oftentimes take the time to learn language around our emotions. We're sort of given a small base to work with, but the more you can explore and differentiate between sadness and grief, the more language you have around that, the easier it is to, in those moments, really open up and, ask for healing that you need in the moment, rather than healing that you need from when you were 16, but you have to go through that other stuff and look at the pain to release it in order to move yourself forward.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite part about that is when you talked about anger, because I've found that true too. Like I love this guy that I listen to. His name's AJ Miller. He has a whole huge article on anger is your guide.
I think I read that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, you read that?
I may have, yeah.
Maybe.
Was it on Mind Valley for a while, or not Mind Valley? Mind Body.
I don't know. I don't read those ones, so I'm not entirely sure. But
Okay.
yeah, anger
Yeah.
is your guide and fear is your friend. And it's
Mm.
like Anger,
Oh no, I don't think I read that one then.
yeah. So anger is our guide because it's exactly where we aren't haven't been humble yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I define humility is the desire, the desire, that's the key word, to
Mm-hmm.
want to feel absolutely every feeling and emotion and belief inside of oneself, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And anger is a sign that there's an emotion that you just do not want to feel,
Yeah.
and a belief that you so desperately want to hold on to because that belief is protecting you,
Mm.
or a expectation or demand that you just definitely want met. And whenever we get frustrated or angry, that's our sign to like really like look at what's going on, because there's a huge opportunity to get deeper within oneself, to get closer to at the core of some sort of error, disharmony that's causing some sort of suffering in our life, some sort of unloving behavior, or that's really choking the life out of some aspect of our life and not really
Mm.
setting us free to play in this playground and to be more in harmony with the laws that govern it, and all that type of stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
And it's funny what just happened while you were saying that for me, if I can share. So by saying when you said that article, it I was like, oh, it sounds like an article I should have read.
uh
And so I was like, oh, I think I know that article. And I just realized that like that's a really it's a bad habit of mine, of like this insecurity of like, oh, it's this is something that I probably should know. So I'm just, I should say that I know it, right?
yeah, yeah,
And my friend Rachel Lowe, she lives in Canada and she's amazing. Our friend actually.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know if you saw her pieces on racism, of how like she was gonna watch her behavior and sort of call herself out on it.
hmm,
I haven't done this publicly, but I've done the same thing with lying, like in honesty, and and it's funny because it's like it really resonates with me to like in those moments when we think, and this kind of goes back to your experience with your girlfriend too, is like in those moments where we think that someone has a certain expectation of us or is going to judge us based on a small vulnerability, it's so easy to just cover that up,
hmm,
right? And move forward. But instead, like calling yourself out on it in the moment can be a such a liberating experience, because then it's like it doesn't matter. Like what did it do when I so hearing that, what did that do for you? Like did that influence your perspective of me at all?
no, it actually just made me more curious as to like almost dive deeper into that and to just like be of service and to of service for your own exploration as to like why you do that. So that's all it did for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an opening to like, oh wow, we can like we can we can go there.
Right.
But
And
nothing
so
else happened.
right. Okay, so good. Thank you for that, because that's what I'm saying. We think that hiding these vulnerabilities for ourselves, or you know, doing these little behaviors that um again, like, saying something that's not true is like there's no necessity to do that, right? But if I just push that down, I might take on like, wow, I'm a liar. But by like calling yourself out in the moment and just bringing light to something that's a small insecurity, or like a behavior that you can catch yourself in, that and hear the reflection of what it does for someone else, that it actually creates a space of opening
Mhm.
rather than like this judgment or expectation. Like that is what I think isn't miss or is missing in today's current relationships. I think that space of being able to connect on multiple levels, whether you're having fun and things are going great and life is wonderful, or you're struggling and sort of going through a a moment of judgment on yourself, that like by connecting on both of those levels and valuing both of those, it actually creates a deeper, more rewarding connection, right? Because it does create that sense of curiosity.
Yeah. So why do you feel like there's a compulsion to lie about those things? And
For myself, yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and I would give context to it. Like, what is it? What building are you trying to keep alive? What building are you trying to keep from toppling over? Or yeah.
I'm not sure I get the building analogy, but I think what you're trying to say is like, what am I afraid? Like, what is it keeping up? Like, what do I think that's the,
Yeah, what is it protecting?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think by doing that, like doing a small compulsion like that, is really keeping me from realizing that that I don't know it all. Like I love the I love the perspective of being a teacher, and I'm good at it. Like my clients that I've worked with are phenomenal, and they've learned so much in a short amount of time. And I help them, and it's not even like they're doing the work and implementing what I'm teaching in their own life, and that's where the success comes in. But it's more like, so if I'm the teacher, and growing up, like this was my expectation, is that like your teacher is kind of the one that like they know the subject, and when they if you have a question, that they'll have the answer, and it's just it's a straight it's like a give and take, right? and and there's this sense of there's a sense of vulnerability that comes from not knowing it all, but nobody knows it all, right? You share what's true and resonates with other people, and the other stuff doesn't matter, right? So I think that like little compulsion is actually me just, and calling myself out on it, is actually a it's like a recognition that it's okay to be human, and I'm actually really everyone's vulnerabilities are actually really valuable.
Yeah. That was gonna be a loud cough.
Okay.
So I muted. Yeah. Yeah, it's I would say I'm going through the same thing in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ways, and I don't think everyone goes through this. I was just about to say that, but I don't actually think. I think a lot of people roll with it. And
Mm.
so I've listened to this one guy. His name is Nicky. He kind of listens to the same person I do, AJ Miller, and he talks about how real humility without arrogance, because
Mm-hmm.
this is what is helping me, is realizing that my desire to know it all is a
Mm-hmm.
form of arrogance.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
which means I'm trying to feel better than people. And that
Yeah.
knowing things makes me better than people. And
Hmm.
when I approach truth that way, like
Hmm.
knowing truth, it actually blocks me from actually absorbing and feeling that truth.
Mm, totally.
And the fact, and we'll know that we're in that state when we're talking about truth, there's this flavor of curiosity for what's more truth that's related to that thing.
Hmm.
And I'm starting to become more sensitive to that, where if I'm describing something and it feels like I'm like we hit a wall, or like
Hmm.
I'm hitting a wall within myself, and I've hit a halt, and I haven't gotten really curious about where else that applies, or what other, like, because like a truths build on top of each other is what this guy was saying. And that's really interesting to me,
Mm,
because it's like, if we feel like we have one aspect figured out and we haven't gotten curious about how that relates to that and that and that and that and that and that, then we are in a state of facade, arrogance,
mm,
avoidance of a feeling, or lack of humility,
yeah.
lack of softening to the truth of our condition,
Hmm.
some sort of desire that's in the way of us sort of melting into the beauty of what we're even saying to other people.
Right.
And so that's a tough one. Um,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
kudos
And it's,
for catching it, and
yeah, thank you.
catching the flavor of where it's coming from, of like needing to be an expert and thinking that we need to be an expert, when in
Hmm.
actuality I think it provides much more energy into the world to actually approach it from a vulnerable place of I don't know anything, or
Yeah,
being okay with not knowing anything, because there's some things that
right,
I feel like I do know,
right.
but
Well, I agree with that. It's like the sense that it's not that we're, that we're just completely empty and we don't know anything, but it's the sense of we know we know enough that's got us to where we are right now. And beyond that, I don't know shit.
yeah, yeah.
And that's okay, because I am not, yeah, in that sense of curiosity. It's, you hear that kind of thrown around a lot. There's a bunch of things that I follow, like Curious Elixirs and the Urban Curious or something like that. Um, and and so I think sometimes people miss the true sense of the word, which is this idea of asking a question and not being disappointed by the answer because you don't already have the answer,
Mm,
right? So it's like whatever answer comes, whether it's reaffirming what you already believed or not, like the answer is the gift, right? But staying in that place of curiosity, it allows you to essentially get either answer and want to learn more and keep going. And it's not about hoarding the information and hoarding the knowledge, but it's more about, okay, oh, I know this, I figured this out to here. What's next? Like, where do I go? And just allowing that, the curiosity to come from inspiration.
yeah, yeah, which is I'd imagine is the app with the absence of arrogance.
Right.
Yeah, because even if we have experienced the flavor of a truth, like I've experienced the flavor of the truth, and I've literally experienced going through the layers of emotions, from anger to the demand to the fear to the grief or the pain that was under there. Like, I've gone through that, which is why I'm so passionate about this, because I'm like, guys, it exists. There are
Right.
layers. They're there. And
Yeah.
it'll fucking free you up. But the fact that I haven't worked through all my anger, or that I'm not at fucking Jesus mode yet, means
Mm.
that I love saying that. Is the fact, like, that means that I could feel deeper into it, that there's still aspects and truths about anger that I can feel deeper into.
Yeah.
And if I just go around and be like, yeah, anger covers this and that and this and that, then I'm that's like feels very linear, and I don't think emotions are as linear as it's like a fucking maze, and some things are
Yeah.
holding anger in this spot, and like it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's simple to hear it, and it's most of the time cut and clear like that, but I don't like it's just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't leave room for expansion, for more feeling. And
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was interesting. I was reading or watching one of those videos on, I think it's on Vox, maybe, about sugar and how and how you were describing what you were just describing reminds me of that video, because it's this idea that like a little sugar is actually necessary for the body, right? So like if you eat a piece of fruit, and your body realizes like, okay, this is sugar, this is good sugar, and your stomach starts to digest it and produces dopamine and serotonin. And so if you so it's a good thing, like sugar is a good thing. But if you eat too much of it, your stomach still produces all of that stuff, but you end up, potentially diabetic because your body's not producing the right amount of insulin,
mm-hmm.
or producing too much insulin. And which is it for diabetes? I forget. Is it?
What, insulin?
Yeah. No, is it producing too much? Like your body overproduces it or underproduces it?
Yeah, insulin resistant. Yeah, I don't remember.
I forget. So whatever. Something I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I have no idea.
But not that important, I guess, for this conversation. And so sugar in itself, um, like emotions in themselves are not a bad thing, right? So, but the more you cut back on sugar, the better your body naturally regulates itself. And so by getting to those states of different emotions and actually looking at the deeper layers, like you're not necessarily overloading your system, you're actually taking less and less sugar because you're letting those go.
Yeah, and they could be overwhelming as fuck sometimes. And we think
Totally.
that it's gonna make us explode, but like the funny thing is those things have been stuck in us and it's actually setting us free.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a gnarly thing. But something that I'm
Yeah.
becoming more aware of with this conversation, and
Mhm.
thank you, is anger is what it is. It creates what it creates, and it's
Mhm.
usually unloving things. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean I have to go in with my mind and judge it as bad or good. It is
Mhm.
what it is. And yes, there
Right.
are truths that it doesn't serve us, that it doesn't serve us to hold on to it. It did serve us at some point,
Mhm.
but it doesn't serve us if we are trying to get closer, in my opinion, to God, to love, to truth, to
Mhm.
whatever. So thank you for that, because it's not a question of whether it's good or bad. It's a question of like, which direction are you trying to go, and does it
Mhm.
serve that purpose?
Right.
Um,
Totally.
and just looking at it for what it is. And I bet
Mhm.
that's the way God looks at it.
Mhm.
He's just like, it is what it is. I still love you to fucking death, though.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah. Right. And so that gets back to that action. Like, so you have a choice to look at that anger and not decide, but like look at where it comes from and look at the emotions behind it and look at, like, just find love through it for yourself and act from that place, or use the anger to cover all of this other shit and then just create more anger in the world or
yeah,
create more hurt in the world, right?
yeah, yeah,
And so, you, like, as people, we have that choice. And that's where, like, those actions that come out of us that are just awful, like rape, like sexual assault, any of that kind of stuff, or even, punching somebody. The sexual assault and rape stuff just seems like very top of mind because of what was going on this week. But any action where you hurt another being, whether it's a plant or a person or an animal, we have those choices or we have the ability to make a choice that doesn't lead us in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've finally reached a point in our collective consciousness where we're willing to put in those extra time to look at those things that matter, like the emotions and the internal workings of ourselves, to realize like that internal dictates what's on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the other way around.
Yeah. So this is what I want to do, because someone may be listening to this and be like, all right, I get it. Anger, like I got to find what's under, blah, blah. So like, what to actually do when anger comes up, because it's what I've found is, like, first off, it needs to be, because the philosophy behind it can inspire an action. But then if the person's like, well, I still don't know what to do with my anger, this is what I would say. And you can add to this whenever you like. But this is what I would say. I would say the first thing to do, first off, there's two types of anger, and I won't get there yet. But the one that most people are going to experience are things like frustration and anger about something. First, but you almost have to connect and experience your anger before you're going to start finding out what it's about. So the first thing
100%
is to feel it and not try to find out what it is right away. Like, you can right away, but that could be during the process of expressing it in a safe and loving environment, experiencing it, and not doing what most spiritual people do, what us spiritual people do, what I do still, is spiritual bypass it and try to like not be angry, because that doesn't help either. So it's about experiencing it in some sort of safe environment. And then what helps me, and this is just
but before you go there, I want to just say, like, the best thing to do with that anger is, if you're angry in the moment and it's like someone's around you, you can express the anger without having it directed at that person. Like, so feeling that anger, even if they're the ones that brought it up in you and like are a part of that moment, feeling that you can express the anger. Like, I do this all the time if I'm on customer service calls and I'm like frustrated with, I don't know, Verizon or, National Fuel or whatever. If I'm frustrated at the situation and I'm on the call with someone and I'm like raising my voice and getting heated, I always make it a point to say, I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at the situation, because that person is there as a customer service. They're there to serve me. They're not there to piss me off more. And it's not their fault that I'm mad. Like, they're picking up the pieces after the fact, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay to express the anger, like you said, and feel it in the moment. Because if you, like you said, do what us spiritual people do sometimes and just pretend not to be angry, then you're actually pushing it down so that it comes out in another way, in an unhealthy way usually.
Yeah, and I would say if you have a compulsion and a desire to actually project it at the person, that would probably be the best time to be like, look, I don't feel like I'm going to be loving in this moment. We need to separate for a second. I have some shit I need to feel, and then I can come back.
Right.
But if you feel like you can own it, that's cool. And that could even, if we could get even zoned into that, it does mean staying in your body. Because if you're not in your body, chances are you're probably going to start projecting it, because you don't want to feel your own anger, because anger doesn't actually feel comfortable to feel. So what we like to do is get out of our body and then express anger, but you actually got to feel it
100%
in your body.
Yes, I tell my clients to throw tantrums, because like, as a little kid, you're feeling that frustration and anger. Like you're literally throwing yourself on the ground.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily tell my clients, because we're adults, that there's a lot farther to fall. So I don't say throw yourself on the ground, but like stomp around a little and like shake your arms and like
And just
let it out.
come on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels good, but it also feels scary.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It takes practice. I still don't fully feel comfortable doing it in front of my girlfriend or
Mm-hmm.
but man, whenever I give myself even a momentary permission to do it or
Mm-hmm.
a momentary ounce of courage to do it, even not all the way through, God, there is relief, dude. There is
Yeah.
so much relief. And I feel more sensitive to what I'm actually frustrated. Like, damn, I actually like just, man, well, I don't, this hasn't come up for me, but I actually just wanted you to cook for me. God damn it. Like my mom used to cook for me and and I just wanted someone to fucking cook for me. That's my demand against women. And then I can connect to what the demand is and like, shit, that's like a lack of wanting to take responsibility for my life and wanting someone to take responsibility for me, for my food and my hunger, when I actually could have an infinite amount of energy to make myself food if I so desired it, if I so wanted to actually work through this demand, feel it, feel how loving it is to project it at another person and own that shit, want to increase my desire for self-responsibility. And then the energy actually comes, and then the resources actually come and the perfect moments to do it come. That's when the magic starts happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you start feeling more courageous towards life, where you feel like you can tackle life, you can go against the fear, you can do whatever you like, whatever, like it leads to all that one thing.
Yeah. By
that
just like feeling the anger and being like, ah,
yeah,
like,
like,
damn it.
damn it. I just wanted
Yeah.
that.
But that's so good, because like so many people just stop at that first part of
Yeah.
like, well, God damn it, I wanted somebody who's gonna cook for me, so we're breaking up because you're not cooking for me,
Yeah.
right? And I know, like, I've been guilty of that, like looking for some outside expectation for someone as a way to end that relationship. And like, and some of them it's just like basic, like, okay, you need to treat me better, and I've given you time to learn how to treat me better, and you haven't learned. So, but whatever. On to it, or that was a little bit of a
Rant.
transgression, I guess. Yeah, a little rant. But it's that moment of like, okay, I can take responsibility for this anger that I feel and actually go deeper. Like, so that it's not actually your responsibility to cook for me. It's your responsibility just to be here with me, because we both said we're committed to this, right? Like we both agreed that we're going to show up for each other. So this is like, so it's only your job to show up for me. And I can see that, like, okay, this demand is actually coming from a place that, like you said, leads down all of these other amazing things and actually is more empowering. Whereas if we like continually give our power away through expectations in other people, then yeah, things are gonna not be great and not feel great, because
No,
we'll feel powerless.
totally. When we actually are powerful. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll live our whole life trying to get and attract people that are going to help meet our addictions, when in actuality we could live life way more effortless without these addictions. And they're so unloving, and they don't add any value to the world. They literally add zero value to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is Abby, by the way.
Hi.
Abby, how do you say your last name?
Spindelman.
Spindelman?
Yeah.
Spindelman. And so I met Abby through Rachel, which is on the first podcast. And do you want to tell people what you do and what you're your life passion is at the moment, what your gift is, what you are like inspired to give to the world, or what you're doing, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So I love that question of like, what is your gift? Because I think we forget that work can be a gift sometimes. And it's amazing when it is. So right now, I'm inspired by and just connected to this idea of intimacy and building relationships and being not the best version of yourself, but how you can continually grow and learn about yourself. Because I think not necessarily being the best version, it's more about continuing that internal curiosity with yourself. Um, so I started a company called Intimacy Alive, and if you want to check out my website, you can. It's just intimacyalive.com. And what I do is I help people get really comfortable and confident in their own skin by helping rebuild layers of trust, compassion, and communication with themselves. And then in turn, helping them connect better with others.
Mm.
And I love it because it, it gets me into the space of vulnerability all the time. And it's that uncomfortable place to play that's so beautiful and magical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what I've seen my clients do in their own life by applying what we talk about and some of the exercises that I give them, like the throwing the tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's this is my life's work. Whether I get paid for it or not, I still do it. And yeah, and I'm also a part-time yoga instructor, so I'm learning to incorporate more of that into the Intimacy Live work. And if anyone's interested in potentially working with me after hearing this conversation, I will be launching a new Thrive Through the Holidays program the week before Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, so that we can start to have our families be places of blessings and learnings and appreciations rather than resentments and all of those fun things that come up when you're an adult around your parents during the holidays, feeling like you're 16 again and sort of regressing.
Yeah. Not really
So,
regressing, but old things coming up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm starting that and will help people really get some more gratitude and appreciation for those people we call family.
Yeah. I love it. That's awesome. Guys, I think you guys should support her because stuff like this needs to spread. One thing I wanted to add, though, you're welcome. One thing I wanted to add was this idea of how this process, it feels like it only really works when we start getting sincere. And that's an interesting quality because I feel like sincerity almost has to be inspired, almost like convinced. And like you won't really actually connect to your anger and release it and get to the emotions under it and release it and get to the place where you get to your grief if you don't really want to. If you don't see the value in it, if you don't, if it doesn't excite you, if you don't see the importance of it, if you don't see how much these emotions affect other people, if you even care if they affect other people, like it's so important for these things for us to care. You want to say hi?
Yeah.
Can I point it at you? Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Hi.
She says hi. Yeah, it doesn't work. And even someone like me who spends literally most of his time on this stuff,
Mhm.
I've even gotten lost in my mind just trying to work on these emotions because I know it's the right thing to do,
Mhm.
because it's the thing to do, like, but
Mhm.
that's not sincere because I'm not feeling into the effects these emotions have into the world. I'm not growing my desire to actually work on these things. And the only way to do that is to feel the truth of it, feel the truth of how damaging they are, how unloving it is, how it's preventing you from being your true self, how it's preventing others from being their true self, how it's limiting the world, how it's adding more pain, how it's like, it's a real issue. And
Mhm.
and it has to be felt into in order for any progress to be made, because otherwise you're just doing a technique and it's not coming from the soul, because this is actual soul work. Like, this is
Yeah.
stuff that the mind almost can't comprehend most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, it is something that you have to feel into, and it takes time, and
Mhm.
it's so much faster and easier with help.
Yeah. So, what can I ask you what inspired you to go in this route? Like what was the thing that sort of propelled you or convinced you that this was the a more fulfilling path?
Oy, oy. Um, I mean, my mind's thinking up of some. Man, I was going really fast in the wrong direction.
Mm.
I would say that. And just so unsatisfied with life. I was sick 365 days of the year. Wasn't able to breathe through my nose till about 5 years ago. Like,
Mm. Wow.
I drank and got blasted 3 times a week, sometimes four or five. You know, and it's not unique to me, but it was having an effect on me. I was never home. I never connected with my family. Didn't have a great relationship with them. Hated my dad. Uh, just was, and I also took hardcore um, pro hormones and stuff, and that totally messed up my
Mhm.
biology. And so
Mhm.
I didn't just find this right away. I went through a process of seeing food as God, and that was going to
Mm.
be my savior. Meditation as my savior. Um, uh, these crystals as my savior, psychedelics as my savior. And it's been a really long journey of really intense experimentation and truth seeking before I've gotten here, right back to
Mhm.
our own soul and our own emotions being the way of healing.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been inspired by pain and suffering
Mhm.
and desperately trying to get well and to
Mhm.
have some sort of joy and happiness. Um, but here I am, I would say, what is it now, almost 8 years later, and it's right back at the soul. It's where the heart is, and it's has nothing to do with anything outside of there. Like, we don't need psychedelics, we don't need even
Yeah.
food. Like, that's not the case. At least that's what I've found in my long sort of experimentation, and so, yeah, and seeing how fast improvements have happened in my life when experimenting with this stuff,
Mhm.
that's been my inspiration, because it's been literally exponentially faster in my life. Like I have a beautiful girlfriend that I love, and I've never had one before this, and it's
Mm.
because of the way I viewed and treated women. And as I worked through this stuff, like, I was able to be sensitive to like a partner, and to
Mhm.
actually bring one in to where I could actually, like, love them instead of have addictions with them and whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, that happened really fast. Like,
Mhm.
within a year or two, I tried to stop drinking for 5 years, and within 2 weeks I stopped drinking, meaning I didn't even have a desire for it anymore. Like, it wasn't even part of my world. And that was
Mhm.
after just 2 weeks of emotional processing about my drinking habits, where they came from, the compulsions. And
Mm.
so, from 5 years to not actually killing the addiction, and then in 2 weeks killing it, like,
Mhm.
those were the experiences I was having. It was like life is going really fast, was going really
Yeah.
fast, and
Mm-hmm.
it so I'm sold, really. I'm sold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's good. It's good. And thank you for sharing that, because what I find is, yeah, most of the time people that get to this point and realize that it is all about like what's inside of us and the soul, and it's not to be selfish in the sense that like, oh, I'm special. It's the sense of like, literally we're all made of the same stuff, and it's powerful stuff that we don't need these external things, and I think the point about drugs that I wanted to make is, I sort of see them as this experience of giving us a glimpse of what's possible for ourselves, so that when we're off of them, we can, or they're reminding us of what's possible for ourselves, what we already knew before we got into them, and getting us back to that space, like to say, hey, if you're uh, the life of the party only when you're drinking, that doesn't mean that you have to be on alcohol to be the life of the party. Like, actually, by being off alcohol, you can be the life of the party because you literally radiate joy and, uh, you know,
Courage.
yeah, courage, bravery, connection, like all of that. And so it's like, by letting go of that and realizing that those feelings that you had on that drug, the good stuff, can still exist. It's like, oh, okay, well then I don't need any of that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And yeah, I would never take back my experiences, but I would never also go back either. I don't think. I'm not going to say that's
Yeah.
definitive, but
Right,
like
of course not.
just
It's your
because,
journey.
yeah, it's totally my journey. And it's been a new experience for me, but yeah, I'll share this one. We have time. I've a lot of the ways that I've been trying to access emotions is through I'm going to call it law of attraction, or for people who don't really vibe with that, is like
Mm-hmm.
just events that are happening to my life because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're happening perfectly. So anytime something happens, I observe it with my mind and I try to connect what feeling may have caused this, what feeling actually drove this, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been serving me amazingly. But there's another level that I'm playing with, trying to become more sensitive to and practice, is that I can actually feel what the truth is of every moment, in every moment, if I wanted to, and it doesn't have to come from observation.
Mm.
And so a lot of people go to these drugs and psychedelics to find answers for themselves
Mm-hmm.
because they don't believe or feel or have connected to the truth that they can actually get the answer that they want in the moment that they're sincere that they want it.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to come from these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it can come in many different forms, but it'll come when we want it. And it doesn't have to be a construct of the mind of logically con- deducting that it's this emotion, which is what I've been
Right.
doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to interrupt for a second, because it's like, so yeah, so you've gotten to that point, right? And this comes back to our initial part of, um, not knowing, right? Is like, not knowing everything, is that that's the best part, is like the way that you got to where you are now is by going through that first step, right? Like you said, the journey is part of the process.
mhm.
Um and or that you wouldn't change the process that you've come through.
Mm-mm.
And so I think it's important to remember that, like, even though you're here now and you're experiencing this second piece of, or not second piece, the trillionth piece of realizing you can find the truth in the moment, or like have the truth when you want, because you don't need any of those exterior things. That what is the point that I'm trying to make? Like, basically that now you're just in that next evolution and process.
Yeah, experimenting with it.
Yeah.
For sure. There are definitely other levels. Yeah, and man, if someone asked me, should I do it? I would say not. I mean, I wouldn't actually condone it, to be honest.
Condone
But
what?
the use of these things, even though they were essential parts of my life,
Right.
but it's, I don't know, it's almost like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I don't feel clear about it.
Yeah.
Because to me, I feel like they were really mind expansive, heart opening experiences where I was like, what the fuck's going on with life? Like, and it made my
Right.
questions much bigger, because I started connecting to the bizarreness of existence, and I was like, what in the fuck?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't know how God sees it, what the truth is. I just
Yeah.
feel like it would be better if we learn the fact that we have the power on our own.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And that's the thing, is like, I'm the same way. I don't condone, using psychedelics or anything like that to get there. It's just, it's almost like there's some people, I don't know, it's not necessarily cheating, but it's like it's getting a glimpse of what's out there, and yet also like getting you to that place of inspiration of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's kind of the same thing, but
Yeah.
it's, it's more, and so it's like, for people that don't do it, they're also able to get to those layers of truth
Mm-hmm.
by being curious and being open, and seeking um other mind altering experiences.
Yeah, and I think a big part of the conversation is how long are you going to stay in the stage of experimenting with these things
Right.
before transcend it, before you whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more an important conversation, because when I was experimenting with these things, I was just desperate, man. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was harmless. Maybe I was a little afraid of them, but like, I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted answers. And so I can relate to people who just, if they're at that place, it's going to be really hard for someone like me and you to really stop that train, because they're
Right.
like, fuck that shit. I'm trying it. I'm flying out to Peru. Like, I'm
Right.
doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess what I would like to be is an example of like, dude, you don't have to stay there, man.
Right. 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 Exactly.
And like,
That's
please
great.
don't. And please don't.
Right.
And like,
Yeah.
let's have a conversation. Let's experiment together. Let me give you an experience of something else, or at least show you that there's a possibility of something else. Like, that feels
Right.
inspiring to me. Not telling you not to do it, but like, dude, there's something
Exactly.
else over here.
Right. Right. Exactly. And like letting someone find their own thing, and they're, like giving them the light, but letting them follow down their own path.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
definitely.
cool.
It is.
What a great spot to end too.
Seriously. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So are you down to be a returning guest?
Yes, that would be
Sweet.
fun. Maybe
Yeah,
in person.
that'll be sweet. That would be
Yeah.
cool. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I enjoyed this. Thank you for joining me, dude. This was a
Yeah.
cool
Well,
conversation.
dudette.
Dudette. Yeah, I call it. Yeah, dudette. You're right. It just doesn't roll off the tongue though. Dudette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think it would be fun to touch base on another part of our journey. Um, so how does this work in terms of like, do you edit down or just let it roll?
Yeah, in the future, I really do want to edit. I want to have like an intro and a whatever,
Uh-huh.
but I'm gonna put if you could just email me or text me your
Uh-huh.
info, I'll put it in the description area, but I'm just gonna
Okay.
post it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do I have your permission? Is there anything here that you just don't want exposed? Are you cool with me just
No.
rec posting it as is?
Yeah. And
Cool.
just the audio or video too?
I'm gonna do video too.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's important for
Good to
people to
know.
see our hand in doing this type of
Right.
stuff.
Sounds good. So not quite podcast, but it's the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it on YouTube. And
Yeah.
then in the future, if you're down, it feels
Hmm.
like a bold action, but to do a podcast live on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
I mean, that's the same thing as posting the video for me.
Not really, because if we're doing a live Facebook, we have
Oh,
people
like if we have
li
questions.
live commenting.
Yeah,
They're
right.
looking at us like their energy is gonna be involved. I'll be
Yeah.
freaking out.
Oh, hell yeah, let's do it. Sign me up.
Sweet,
Yeah.
I'm down to.
Yeah,
All right.
cool.
Yeah, my name is Samir Malik. This is weird for me to do this, but yeah, my website is The Activated Soul. Um, yeah, I like to coach too. Like if I have helped people for sure, and
Hmm.
giving people a different option and seeing their life and the resolutions to them differently. And I can help people the best where I've helped myself. And man, like if you have, yeah, I can help. You know,
Hmm.
if you're looking for anyone to just talk to, that's I sort of I call it emotions coaching. Whether I've honed it into what aspect of it, not really. I kind of just meet you where you're at, and that magic always happens if you meet me sincerely in that place, because we can both drop in and we can really start moving things and at least help expand your perception of what's going on in your life through the eyes of the soul, really, about how you feel instead of ignoring that aspect of it, and how you can resolve life without having to read a book or whatever, but to just to feel, to feel the truth of what's going on in your situation. So if that feels inspiring to you, I'm here, man. Like I'm ready. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, I'm here to serve. Thanks, Abby.
Yep. Thanks, Samir.
Yeah, I'll catch you later. All right, I'll let you know when I
Okay.
post this.
Sounds good.
All right,
Bye.
peace.